Okay, we're back. We're live. We're at ThinkTech Talks here at the 3 to 4 block on a given Wednesday. We're a little late because we had some connection problems, and but we're timely in the sense that just a few minutes ago we wrapped up a very large and successful conference on technology in agriculture here in Hawaii at the YWCA Fuller Hall. Which was really an interesting panel program. We've been circulating that for some time. And it's only appropriate that we talk to John Witzke, who was into agriculture and who has technology through WRT that helps plants use less water and that helps agriculture provide greater yield. And we want to catch up with him about that because it falls neatly in our quest for new technology in agriculture in Hawaii and elsewhere. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
John, what is your background? Are you a chemist or an agriculture specialist of some kind? What's your training and what's your expertise?
I've been in agriculture all my life. When I was a young person, our family owned an agricultural laboratory where we tested seed, food, water, milk, wine, soil, and tissue. And I started working there when I was 10 years old. So I grew up in a laboratory, and then about 40 years ago, we decided to buy our first ranch, and we started growing almonds. And for the last 8 or 9 years, I've worked with growers on the West Coast, helping them to grow better plants and better crops.
So where is it then?
Mostly in California. I'm here in Central California, but we work all over California and in the West.
Okay, I see a picture. We have a picture on our screen because we couldn't get Skype to work proper. But who is it you on the right or you on the left?
I'm on the right, and that's my son Joseph on the left.
Okay, and he's working with you in the business.
Yes.
Okay, so WRT is your business then, and it's a website, WRT.com. And what is that about? What does the business do?
We work with growers of all kinds of different crops to help them grow better plants that will produce better crops that will be beneficial to the humans and animals that consume them.
Okay, so I heard a lot in that. I guess the first question is, what kind of technology is WRT? Exactly what are you doing to the plants with this technology, and how are you doing it?
By using good quality products, nutrients and also biological products, and also taking into account the water and the effect it can have on your nutrition programs, we're able to grow a stronger plant that grows a lot better crop that's actually got some nutrition in it.
So if I do business with WRT, I mean, how do you deliver on that? I mean, you come out to my farm? Do you send me a book or a journal or a newsletter?
No, you'll actually see us. We want to come out to your farm and take a look what you've got. We'll only take a look at the irrigation system, what kind of plants you have, if they're healthy or not. We also take soil and water samples and have those analyzed, and then we can begin to tell you what you need to do on your ranch. Okay,
so I guess a lot of this has to do with water. And of course, that goes to the whole question of whether water is plentiful in your area or in the world. So I guess I would draw the conclusion from what you said that if you came out to my farm and you found that the water was too acid or base, then you would say, oh, wow, this is not going to grow a good crop. We have to do something to correct the balance in the water. Is that right?
Yes, there's things we can do to water to treat it to make it less harmful to the soil.
Okay.
Really, what we do is, I'm a little bit different than a lot of other people. A lot of people go out there and they want to treat the water. To me, that's a Band-Aid. What I want to do is prepare the soil to be in receipt of bad water. The soil is everything. If you have your soil right, you can get a lot of things.
So when you come out to my farm to look at my crop, you're going to be looking at the soil too.
Absolutely.
So are you using instruments to look at the water and look at the soil? And what kind of instruments are they? What do they tell you about, the environmental condition that my plants are in?
What we do is we take soil samples and water samples and send them off to a laboratory that we like to use.
Uh-huh.
They analyze them for all the different nutrients and salts in the soil and water, and then we can determine what we want to do on your place.
Okay. And now what about the soil?
Same thing, we take soil samples also and send them off the same lab.
Okay. So you have a laboratory determine, what bad things may be in the water or the soil.
Right.
And now they come back and give you some sort of report on what's in the water, what's in the soil. Now, is this the secret sauce? I mean, where you take that information and you figure out what's wrong about it and you figure out how to make it right. Is that your special value added?
Yes, we take the results and then we take a look at it and we determine what you need to do as far as possibly treating the water, but absolutely doing things to correct the soil.
Okay, so it's really case by case, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Every farm you're consulting personally, and you're testing personally, and you're making an analysis that is only for that farm, and then you're making recommendations that are tailored to that farm, that crop, that water, that soil. Yeah.
That's correct. We tailor them specific to each field. You might be farming 10 different fields, and each one of them could be different. So all of our recommendations are tailored to each field.
Okay, so now you've made a recommendation that I have to add something to the water. I have to correct something in the water, and maybe something in the soil. Are you going to be able to tell me exactly how I do that?
Yes. We'll recommend what to use, and we'll tell you how to inject it and how much.
Okay, so for example, the water. I would have to put an additive in the water before it reaches the crops. Is that it?
In some cases, if you have a high pH caused by high bicarbonates, we'll use sulfuric acid to knock out the bicarbonates.
Okay.
We can tell you what we do is we send that water sample to the laboratory, and they do what they call a titration test and tell you exactly how much sulfuric acid to use to get the water down to a certain pH.
Okay, so now you're going to actually drop this additive, whatever it is, an acid or a base, whatever it is, in the water supply as it is flowing into the field, right?
That's correct.
How do you know how much to give? I mean, because it's flowing. You know what I mean?
Well, there's two ways we can do titration in the laboratory, and that'll tell you how much you should use. Or what a lot of people do now, we're placing a pH meter on the water, and we're using that to tell the computer how much acid to inject into the water.
Okay. Now, what about the residue from before? In other words, suppose this bad water was flowing into my field, like for 20 years, and I didn't know, or I wasn't doing anything about it. And now we're going to give it good water. Doesn't the presence of the negative elements in that water, don't they stay around? Don't they stay in the soil?
Yes, they do. Treating the water is just the first step, and once we get that done, then you're no longer going to continue to make things bad in the soil. Now we have to address the soil and take care of the problems in the soil.
Right. Okay. So that would be at least part of why you test the soil.
Correct.
In the case where you test the soil, we have to look at topsoil of what? I guess it depends on the crop, but it could be a foot or two from the surface, and that's an awful lot of soil. So you find that we have to put an additive, for example, in the soil in order to make it more productive. How do you actually put the additive in the soil?
If you have a sprinkler system, we can just run it through the sprinklers, whether it's tape or rotators or micro sprinklers. If you don't have that and you're flood irrigating, we'll just put it on the soil and flood irrigate and let that go into the soil along with the flood water.
Well, you can put it in with the water, right? You can just put it in the water supply and it'll get into the soil, no?
Absolutely. That's the easiest and best way to do it.
Yeah, okay. You don't have to dig up the field.
No.
That'd be expensive.
Yeah.
And can you do this in the middle of a growing season? In other words, I come to you, John, and I say, gee, I got a problem here. I don't like the way this crop is going. Can you take a look at it? And you take a look at it and say, oh, you have to, make some changes here to the water and or the soil. And would you come out, fairly quickly? I mean, in the middle of a growing season, and
yeah. There's no wrong time to correct a problem. It's when it's happening. You want to get out there right now. It doesn't matter if it's at the end of the season. We can start working on it for the beginning of next season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So any time is fine. It's always going to be a better day when you correct the problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you're doing the soil, just to go back to that for a minute, and you found that there's some element in the soil that isn't working right, what kinds of things would you add in order to recondition the soil that way?
So the biggest thing to restoring our soil, over the last 50, 60 years, we've used so many salt-based fertilizers, we've destroyed the humus in the soil, which comes from organic matter.
Uh-huh.
And I normally start with that, is my first step, is starting to restore the humus or the carbon to the soil. Mm-hmm. And then we start building on that with everything else.
But that's only one of many possibilities, I expect. I mean, there's got to be dozens and dozens of different problems the soil could be having, yeah? And so you have your chemical analysis, you don't know exactly what it's going to be. It could be any one of a number of things, right?
That's correct. It could be a dozen different things. Easy.
What about, suppose you find, this is a sort of a love canal kind of scenario, but suppose you found that there was toxic material in there. Maybe it was leaching in, who knows from where. You have soil which is toxic, which isn't really good for either growing the crops or eating the crops. What do you do then?
Well, it depends. If you're talking about some kind of salt, such as sulfates or bicarbonates or things like that, there's products we can use to offset them. If you're talking about toxic chemicals, we can work on them with microbes.
Oh, interesting. So it's not like you're at a loss if you find that there's toxic material in the soil. You can use microbes. That's pretty sophisticated in order to neutralize the toxic materials. And I guess this is a technology that's been around for a while, but it's in an array of tools that you have available. So even in a difficult situation, it's not that you don't have any course. You do have a course of action, even with toxic materials.
Yes, absolutely. Microbes can do a lot of different things for you if you understand how to use them properly.
Well, how do you use them? I mean, suppose I have some material that I need to get rid of, and a microbe, we found through science that a microbe will eat this, or neutralize this particular toxic material. How do I introduce the microbe into the soil in order for it to do its job?
That's really quite simple. Also, we just run it through the sprinkler system. You got to have the initial application, then it's a little bit every month, and that little bit every month makes a big difference.
Well, what I'm getting is the thought that this is a fairly sophisticated business because you have to do triage on figuring out what you got, and then when you get a combination of factors, then you have to figure out what remedy to apply. I mean, it's almost like practicing medicine because it doesn't present easily, and you have to look at a number of symptoms before you know exactly what's stunting the growth. No?
I mean, when we go out there, we're going to look at the plants themselves, and they will be expressing problems. Then also just by looking at the soil and water, know how they interact with each other, how much the water can affect the nutrition of the soil. Mm-hmm. Also the biology. The biology is a very important leg. We have 3 legs: the soil, the water, and the biology. And a lot of people just don't understand the importance of biology.
So a farmer calls you up and he says, John, you got to get down here and help me out. I got a problem. I'm having very low yield, and my plants don't look so good, don't taste so good. It's got to be something in the water or the soil. Why don't you come down? And you come down. It reminds me of those troubleshooters with the oil wells in Texas. You know, the oil well blows the gasket, and the guy comes down and caps it. He's a wildcat, sort of a wildcat analyst. You call him, and he does damage control, and that's what it sounds like. Am I right?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yes. We're out there, assessing the damage, and then we're, trying to figure out with our knowledge what we can do to it to mitigate it.
You're the farmer's farmer. Well, let me ask. I mean, so how did you get this expertise? It sounds like there's a at least in your mind, there's a really thick book of all the choices and all the possibilities and all the remedies in various degrees and gradations and combinations. How did you get all that experience that you could make these choices?
Well, I grew up in our family laboratory to begin with, and then I've been farming for 40 years, and it's sitting back and watching what's going on. You do this and you get that, and try and put two together, and just thinking about things and realizing. It was a few years ago that I realized how much the water affects what you're doing to the soil.
Yeah.
It's just trying to put everything together, and we have a pretty good knowledge of the water, soil, and biology, and how all three of them interact with each other.
Yeah, really interesting. It's a different view. Well, let me take a short break, John. That's okay. John Witzke. He's a farmer's farmer, and he has WRT.com, which is a kind of triage and repair of environmental conditions that may impede the development of crops and farming. This is ThinkTech Talks. We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, my name is Dr. Rafi. Every week, I'm right here at ThinkTech Hawaii, 3 p.m. on Mondays. My show is Boris' Bio Briefings. What do we do here? Well, we watch sperm swim. We see if they catch anybody. We check out the latest biosimilars. You know, the kind that, what was his name, the guy with the bicycle? I guess we forgot his name, but he was taking EPO and other human growth factors. We'll be talking about human growth factors. You want to know where to get some? Maybe I'll tell. Anyway, you can catch me, as I said, every week right here, Monday, 3 p.m., ThinkTech Hawaii, Dr. Rafi. You can also find me on Twitter, BioInfoMedical. Or you can catch me on Facebook, Dr. Rafael Boritzer. I'll be happy to converse with you. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're talking to John Witzke here on ThinkTech Talks, and he is an expert in agriculture and solving growing problems, I guess mostly in California and a variety of places. And he's a troubleshooter, a problem solver under WRT.com. So, I wanted to ask you, John, this is a very sophisticated business. Have you ever run into a set of conditions on a farm, a client of yours, which you couldn't fix? Has that happened?
Not yet. We've been able to help everybody so far.
Wow. Well, let me refine it a little. I mean, has there been a situation where you made it work, but it was very hard, and it took you more time, resources, and work to fix it?
Yes, that does happen. Sometimes they're pretty complicated, and there's times where it's getting the grower to do what we want because they're kind of reluctant, because a lot of things we do are different than the traditional way of doing things.
Yeah. How do you know when you've succeeded? I mean, what's the metric? What's the success point that you can point to?
When you see a smile on the farmer's face.
Okay.
When you see the plants starting to grow again and starting to produce like they should, that's when you know you've done things right.
Yeah, that's great. So do you charge when you charge? I'm sure this is a business. When you charge them, do you charge them on the basis of success, or hours, or a flat fee, or a combination? How do you calculate your charges?
Well, right now what I do is my consulting is free, but you're going to buy some products from me. I don't sell you everything you need, but there are a few companies that do represent that if you need it, I will request you to use our products.
And the products are products that will fix the farm.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask is, you've talked about, having multiple clients, I guess, around California, but, what about this knowledge that you have? I mean, could you ever codify it? I'm sure your son might take over the business. Maybe he's in the business now, and he's learning from you, but, in the next generation of it, maybe people would expect that you would codify it, write it down, and distribute it, in some way other than personally. In other words, that you could have third parties or franchisees or affiliated companies that could actually do what you do for clients who are far away, and more clients than you can handle all by yourself. Is that in the cards?
We've thought about it and talked about it, and that could happen in the future. My son is doing very well. He understands nutrition and water and biology himself, and I've got a friend who's trying to encourage me to write a book. So it'll happen in the future.
Yeah. Well, are there other John Witzkes around, John? I mean, if I looked across the country, I looked into the Farm Belt, I looked into, industrial agriculture, if you will. I mean, I guess a farmer who has a farm that's doing, industrial level production is going to be more interested in, in having you fix it, because for him, every day counts, and if his crop isn't successful, it's going to cost him, rather than, a small family subsistence kind of farm. But I wonder if there are people like you all across the country that do this kind of troubleshooting for plants, farms that are not properly producing.
There's a lot of consultants out there. I'm trying to be nice here, that do help growers and whatnot. I don't think they have the knowledge that I have and know how to put it all together. A lot of these guys have some good ideas and some good thoughts and whatnot, but they can't bring them all together. And I'm not saying, I'm some kind of Einstein, because I'm not. It's just a lot of common sense is what it is.
Yep. So, well, in the end, it's your professional judgment kind of thing based on years of experience, what it sounds like to me.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, but are there people out there as a trade or business, across the country who regularly consult with farmers about improving yield?
Well, there's a lot of people out there that do that, yes.
Yeah.
There's only a couple that I think know what they're doing.
Okay. So you must it must be an organization or some kind of community of people who trade stories and try to learn from each other about how to do this, especially given the difficulty of doing it.
Yeah, there's some different groups out there that people can belong to, but there's really, to my knowledge, there's not a consultants group that everybody gets together and meets and shares ideas. And I wouldn't fit in there anyhow, because I don't like anybody else out there.
Well, I want to correct something, John. The company is called WRT, but the website is WRTAG. WRTAG for agriculture, I guess, .com. Yeah,
That's
sorry.
correct, yeah.
Well, the bottom line is whatever the process of the black box, whatever the process of your expertise and judgment, you can make a serious difference in a given farmer's yield. And I'd just like to know how serious that can be. I mean, I'm operating on the assumption that he will have greater yield and will use less water. So what kind of results have you been able to achieve in solving these, what do you would call contamination problems, and having greater yield and less water. How much greater? How much less water? How much improvement?
So as far as water goes, there's not a huge difference. We can strengthen the plants so they can use a little bit less water. As far as production goes, we can get them to use less fertilizer. In some cases, we've increased their crops as much as 80%. So,
80% increase in yield?
yes,
Well, that's huge.
it is absolutely huge. And then when they get the quality, they get a lot better price also.
Mm-hmm.
So they're using less fertilizer, a better yield, and with the quality, they get a better price.
Well, that's huge, and on a large farm, especially a commercial farm, that's going to be big bucks. And what strikes me is that you're the expert, the advisor, the problem solver, but in a large farm, wouldn't they have somebody on staff who would do this? Or am I missing something about the development of American agriculture to think that it has become so much a business that nobody on the farm understands the water and the soil and the possible problems well enough to be able to solve these problems in-house by themselves? I mean, what kind of people are running farms where they don't know how these things work?
Now you're going to get me in trouble with everybody. There's a lot of these big farms. They do have an in-house consultant, and they are doing fairly well. But sometimes it's really good to get an outside set of eyes with some different hats on things to take a look and maybe bring some different products in and some different ideas and help.
Well, what about, have you run into issues about insecticides, pesticides? Because we have controversy about that here in Hawaii. And I just wonder if that's part of, the area of analysis that you work in. In other words, sometimes you find these contaminants in the soil or the water. Are they residue from pesticides?
A lot of times they can be. They can be residue from pesticides or fungicides or herbicides.
Uh-huh.
And, with biology, we can break them down and, render them harmless.
I see. So you use, it's the microbes again or something else?
It's the microbes again, yes.
Okay, so if you find a residue of some dangerous pesticide, not dangerous, but adverse effects pesticide, the contamination of the soil, then you can use the microbes to break them down as if they weren't there anymore. That's pretty good.
Yes. We did that on some strawberries down in Oxnard, Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
Planted them in an old lemon grove, and they ran the herbicide through the sprinklers, and there was a circle through the whole field wherever the lemon was. You had the residue of the herbicide, and there are circles where the strawberries were doing no good. So we got some microbes out there, and some other products too. And pretty soon, you couldn't tell the difference because we got rid of the residue.
Well, that's terrific. Oh, well, that's very sophisticated stuff.
And also that when we work with the plants, if we can create a stronger plant, you don't need to spray as much with insecticides.
Well, how do you mean create a stronger plant? How would you do that, or recommend it be done?
Just good nutrition, using products that actually get into the plant. We can change the plant and make it a stronger plant so the insects won't attack it.
You're talking about breeding, or just that one life of one plant?
No plant breeding. This is just good nutrition and creating a stronger plant, a healthier plant.
And how do you do that? You put different kinds of nutrients in the water?
Different nutrients, but the thing you've got to use, you've got to use nutrients that actually get into the plants. There's a lot of nutrients out there. I don't care how much you put on the soil or how much you put on the leaf. If it doesn't get in the plant, it doesn't do any good. Mm-hmm. So the nutrients we use get into the plant, and we can affect changes pretty quickly and build a stronger plant. Mm-hmm. So they're resistant to fungus and insecticides.
So okay, so you have a million possibilities. But I was telling you that we have controversy in Hawaii. We have controversy about pesticides, and the larger controversy is about GMOs.
Yeah.
And gee, I tell you, people are so polarized about that. It's hard to believe. We now have ordinances in 2 counties, which requires farmers to go through hoops, not only to label the products, but also to report on their involvement with GMOs. I just wonder if GMOs play a role in some of the problems that you've seen. There's been complaints about GMOs blowing from one field to another and then contaminating the second field. Some people think that GMOs are really dangerous, although there's no evidence of that. And I wonder where it plays for you, John.
Well, I know GMOs will go from one field to another. I have a almond grower over here in my peak I work with, and right next to them they grow a field of GMO alfalfa.
Mm-hmm.
And when that alfalfa shows up in his orchard, the only way he can kill it is go out with a shovel and dig it up. Weed sprays won't kill it. So he actually has to go out and dig up that alfalfa in his orchard to get rid of it. So GMOs, that does spread from field to field.
Mm-hmm. Well, does it create a growing environment, which is, difficult for the farmer, difficult for yield, difficult for the renewal of the crop?
There are some problems with GMOs and the fertilizing and whatnot. You've got to do things differently sometimes on those plants to make them grow.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak if they're good or not, but they can cause some other problems.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Well, I mean, do you ever go out to a given farmer and say, look, the reason your crop isn't working right, the reason it's not growing right is because it is either a GMO, which isn't working so well, or you're not using a GMO, and you should start using a GMO crop that's resistant to, soil, weather, insect conditions, what have you, insecticides. Do you ever give advice to go from one side of that boat to the other?
No, I don't do that. That's not what I'm about.
Okay, so you'll work with either one.
I will. I prefer them to be non-GMO, my personal preference. But
Mm-hmm.
if the farmer's having problems, I want to help the farmer. Is what I'm after.
Yeah, right. Doesn't matter what. Yeah. Well, I mean, but I suppose too, you could. Wouldn't you sometimes be in a position to say to the farmer, look, you're growing crop A, but the fact is this soil doesn't support crop A so well, and the rainfall in this valley doesn't support it so well, and you don't have enough water or something, and you want to go to crop B. You'll do better with crop B.
Sure. I mean, that just makes sense. If somebody's trying to grow something in an area where they shouldn't be, I'll tell them, try something different.
Mm-hmm. Well, the one thing I'd like to get from you, I don't know if you spent much time in Hawaii or looking at Hawaii or reading, seeing how things work out here, but I'm not sure that we have consultants like you out here. And I wonder if you had some sort of general advice for farmers out here, because, as a sort of community matter, we would like more young kids to get into farming. We'd like them to try their hand at it, even if they have no background, no legacy at all, no family that owned a farm for 100 years, nothing like that. We'd like them to try it out, use the best technology, the best practices and so forth, and see if they can make a living and send their kids to school as a farmer. So you've been around, you've talked to a lot of farmers. You know the industry and the way, people handle their lives as farmers. What's your thought about that? What's your advice to, say, high school graduates or college graduates? Maybe they have a little agriculture in their training. What do you think about farming as a career and an industry?
I think farming is a great way of life. There's a lot of fabulous people out here that I get to meet and work with. The big problem is, more and more of these farmers are becoming corporate, and small farmers getting, bought out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's sad, because the small farmers made this country. I understand corporate farms because, the bigger things are, the cheaper things are. But it's sad to see the family farm disappearing. And I'd love to see more and more kids get into ag. If nothing else, just take some ag classes so they can learn where food actually comes from. Food doesn't come from supermarkets like a lot of kids think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. They think it comes from the sky somewhere.
Yeah.
Come in big planes, big birds.
Right.
Well, okay, I really appreciate the discussion with you, John. I think you must be very gratified in your work. You're helping people, not only the farmers, but the people who buy the produce from the farmers. And that must give you a level of satisfaction to be able to solve these problems and keep the industry going, keep the farmers farming. So I thank you very much for your time on this, and I wish you well in your effort. That's John Witzke. He runs WRT, which is I guess an agriculture consulting service. Website is wrtag.com in California. We've been talking about new technology in agriculture, and John is definitely involved in that. Thank you so much, John Witzke.
Thank you very much. You have a great evening.
Aloha.
Aloha.